I have the cards now. See, that's like Balatro. Hello, everyone. I'm Alex.
I'm Andy.
And today, for this episode of Do a Review, the show where two guys review two games, we're going to be talking about Slay the Spire and Balatro, two legendary card game roguelikes. Let us know what you guys think about these games. Let us know what we should review next in the comments, and we hope you enjoyed this video.
Two worst games ever made. I was kidding.
Also, we do not support gambling. Don't gamble. We're going to be talking about poker a lot, and poker is sick, but you shouldn't gamble. You should save your money to spend at retro game stores.
Or the stock market.
Yeah. I think games are a better investment generally.
At this moment in time, yes.
That's true, yeah. The Chrono Trigger price isn't crashing.
Right.
All right, let's get into the first game. I say we just go chronologically here and start with Slay the Spire. This was the first, roguelike card game I ever played. I think it was not literally the first one, but definitely the first big one that was on a lot of people's radar. So it introduced a lot of people to this clever little idea of a genre. The success of Slay the Spire and games inspired by it really just shows that the whole idea of building a deck and a roguelike go together so perfectly.
I played this game a lot during the pandemic. This was kind of like my comfort food at the time.
Yeah. I played it a lot during finals a year and a half ago. It was big. It was big with me then.
The NBA finals.
My finals, which are very similar to the NBA finals in a lot of ways.
Cool.
People do brackets on how many classes I'm going to pass or whatever.
Got it.
This is definitely a game you can just kind of sink a ton of time into, which I think is a good and bad thing. I'll get into that a little bit later.
Well, it's a game you can sink a lot of time to, but you can also just pick up and play it for 10 minutes if you wanted to. Or whatever,
yeah. No,
which I think is a sign of a great game when you can do either of those things.
Yeah, I think mechanically this game's super sound. I think the choices of characters you get give you a good range of play options. The first one is the most straightforward, kind of just you hit him with your sword. There's probably some kind of strategy around damaging yourself, I think. The thief guy was probably my favorite early on, doing poison and stuff. And what does a rogue like? Poisoning people. Does that work as a pun?
Sure. Why not?
And then there's the robot who's super cool, and then the last person who's a yogi or some sort of spiritual person who has a bunch of different states they can enter. Super fun. I do really like all the characters in this game, which I think is huge because a significant amount of your playtime is just kind of switching between them.
The poison guy, I mean, it felt like he was kind of the spell caster, though, of the group. But I didn't also feel like I played it completely as a poison type system.
There's a couple other things you can do. The thief has a bunch of zero cost attacks and cards that will raise how much zero cost attacks do.
I really liked those.
Yeah. So a lot of the thief strategy could be just kind of stacking those. And it is cool. Yeah. It seems like each character has a couple different strategies they can reliably use, which for a roguelike is important because you never really know what you're going to get, and it is kind of about reacting to that. And I think Slay the Spire does a great job of giving you enough opportunity to kind of customize your deck without making it feel easy. In fact, I think this game is really hard for a roguelike, honestly.
Oh yeah, I think this game's super hard.
Even with that, just at the current skill level I am of winning a run one every, I don't know, 150 times. It does feel like every run I'm at least productive, or maybe I'm finding a new strategy or something.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard, but it's forgiving in that it's no matter what happens, it's fun. I mean, I think this really is a great game, and it's had staying power, obviously, because it is a great game. There's a lot of depth in it, but I don't know. The one thing I don't like about deck building games, and this totally just comes from years of playing Magic the Gathering and other games like that, is I wish that there was a little more depth in the design of the overall game, the visual aesthetic of it all. It feels a little too watered down from an aesthetic point of view.
The visuals are okay with me, honestly. There are other roguelikes I've played that I think have significantly more issues with that, like Monster Train. You've ever heard of that game? Which I think is super fun, but it kind of looks like a weird virus flash game or something. Yeah. But with Slay the Spire, and honestly a lot of roguelikes similar to it, even maybe more of an issue with Balatro, which we'll get into. But I just feel like it's lacking, not visual interest, but just depth in general. I don't know why I'm supposed to care about anything. It's like Binding of Isaac and Hades, which obviously are a different genre of roguelike altogether, but they still are roguelikes. They still give you this backing story that you do care about, and characters that you do relate with, and what their goals are. And in Slay the Spire, I have no idea who these characters are. I don't know why this random robot is trying to fight all these birds and slimes.
Yeah.
It is very much just here's an excuse to do our battle system,
right,
with no story, which I do think does take away from the game somewhat.
Yeah, because I think that stuff is where you can start to get into fleshing out the game's world with lore and all that other stuff. And I mean, you can easily argue that the game doesn't need any of that, and nor were the designers into creating any of that. But I think when I gravitate towards certain types of games, especially with when they have a fantasy-esque element, having something there to latch on to, I think it would have kept me more interested longer.
Yeah. No, like you're saying, this game is definitely amazing. You know, I've played it for like 50 or 60 hours, which for someone like me who really can't stick with a game that long usually, you know, obviously I can't say that this game is not fun to play, but I don't think it will stick with me as much as some other games, because it does just kind of feel like I'm like making the voices in my head stop for a little bit, and then, you know, I'm not like invested in the game.
The replayability is probably linked to my own neuroses, where the whole like formula of you play and then you realize how you screwed up, and I can fix that next time. And then you do that, and then all of a sudden it's like 3 hours later and you've just been playing this game the whole time. And the part of it where it's like, okay, I need to restart it right now. It's not like I'm gonna go do this one thing and then put it down. It's like I have to do that again. I have to do that again. Okay, I have to do that again. And then you've just played it like for 3 hours.
Yeah. No, it's very like consumable. It's like it's like Texas Roadhouse bread or something. You know, it's like you could probably eat it forever.
Like free chips at any restaurant.
Yeah.
You know you shouldn't eat them all because your meal's coming, but yeah, you're going to eat them all.
Yeah, the meal will probably be like more exciting and maybe a little more like fleshed out, but you can just eat those chips forever. And that is what Slay the Spire feels like. It's not what all roguelikes feel like, specifically with even both these games we're talking about today. There is just like kind of that third dimension of depth that are lacking in both of them.
Yeah, for sure. Even more so in Balatro.
Yeah,
but Balatro could easily argue that it definitely doesn't need that or want that or anything.
Do you want to rate Slay the Spire
sure,
first?
Yeah. I give it 9.5. No. 6.5.
Can you say I give it a 6? It just makes it easier.
Andy,
yep.
on this day, the 10th of March, give Slay the Spire.
This is going to be so much worse to edit.
Sorry. I give it a 6.5 out of 10.
Okay, that is way lower than I expected, to be honest. I'm going to give this game a 9 out of 10.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I can't fault it for not being fun. I've played it so much, but I can't give it a 10 because I don't think it has that kind of third dimension to stick with me because of its lack of depth. But as a game, I can't say I don't love this game. Like, I play it a ton. I think it's fun to, you know, perfect your deck. I just think these play styles go together so well.
I don't give any games that aren't first party Nintendo or AAA games any higher than a 7. So
they have to cost at least $50 million to make, or you're not going to give them
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that makes sense. Very, very money-minded individual here. The official Slay the Spire score from Materia is a 7.5 out of 10. This game is better than the Patrick Star game. Speaking of being money-minded, let's get into Balatro. Do you like poker in general?
No.
Really?
I mean, I like the idea of poker.
Oh.
I don't know. I'm not a big like, hey, let's have poker night with the guys.
That's how I met like all my friends in college. I bought like a poker suitcase and I was like, I have the goods. And then we played poker. So yeah, I mean
poker's an old ass game. Generations have been playing this game.
Yeah. It came out, I think, around when Super Mario Bros. Came out. I think in
the original Mario Bros. Not Super Mario Bros. The original arcade Mario Bros. I think that's when poker
I think both kind of have clunky controls. I dropped the cards a lot. But
poker was an Atari game too, I think.
That makes sense. Or there's like some blackjack something.
Oh, yeah, definitely blackjack.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not huge on the concept of gambling just because I like to waste my money on other stuff. But poker as a game, I have a pretty good poker face just because, I don't know, I don't have a soul, I guess. I like playing poker just as poker. So when I heard about Balatro, and this was a game I just kind of stumbled across. Like, Balatro's had a ton of hype on the internet.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard of any of it. I just found the game and saw the description was like a poker roguelike. And I was like, yep, that sounds like my favorite game.
Poker had a renaissance, I feel like, in the 2000s because there was like a lot of like, that was when all the shows came out about poker. Yeah, like you, I feel like I was reading a lot of stuff about Balatro. I think when I was like, oh, a poker roguelite, I was like, they did it. They finally did it. They figured these two things that don't go together, but they actually do go together, and they're freaking geniuses. Why didn't I think of that? I was mostly mad at myself for not thinking.
Yeah, we could come up with that.
Yeah, anyone on this planet could have come up with that, but they were the freaking ones that did it. Yeah, now they're millionaires.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, to be fair, it's like not like you kind of hinted at, this game doesn't have really anything else going on besides like some nice elevator music, I guess. All the cards are pretty much no-brainers of like what you'd expect. It's like some are like +3 multiplier if a card's a heart or something. So it is like very obvious, I guess, to make this game, but to be fair to them, like you said, you didn't do it first. So
it was like some huge like RPG nerd just like fell asleep and had like a fever dream where he thought he was in like some like poker world and was just like, what if cards had buffs? What if cards did that? And it was just like freaking genius. Yeah. And when you start playing the game too, like, I mean, because you go into the game probably reading some tagline like that, and then you start like seeing, oh, this 7 is +4, this and all this, and you see how the buffs actually work, and it gets even more angry that you didn't think of it because it works so brilliantly. Like it really is kind of like this weird like perfect mix of like secret sauce.
Yeah, and I think like as like people who like RPGs, like optimizing your party and stuff, it is just very nice to see the number go up. Yeah. I think that obviously is like what is most addicting about this game. It's pretty much the entire point. Like the only difference between rounds, besides like, you know, sometimes there's like a debuff or something, is you have to score more points. So it is just really about making your deck more and more efficient with each round.
And I think that there's a lot of freedom for different like strategies, and I think people probably have different strategies that they gravitate towards that make this game also incredibly compelling from like a strategy point of view. I'm not actually a really big like narrative story driven RPG fan. I kind of like the games that are more stripped down just about like the battle systems and the mechanics like that, and it even lends itself more to those types of games, which to me makes it even more compelling to play.
No, I think we both love like stuff like Fire Emblem for that reason. About the strategies, I honestly kind of had a separate opinion.
There's no story in Fire Emblem. That's what I took away.
There is a story in Fire Emblem, but at least in every single Fire Emblem I played, it is the same story about a bunch of like spoiled royal anime characters fighting some evil dragon that's with overtaken with like the world
with like creepy cronies that work for the dragon guy.
Around
every corner,
and usually at least 1 or 2 uncomfortable romances. And that has been every Fire Emblem game for me.
Yeah, fair enough.
I do like the characters in Fire Emblem. I mean, at least Awakening. I really like the story. We don't have to get into Fire Emblem right now. But my point is, you were talking about how there's a plethora of different strategies in Balatro.
Yeah.
I kind of had the opposite opinion of that. That was my main complaint, is that it feels pretty limited in what works. So I am curious, like, what you were doing in the game that you found worked best generally.
Well, I mean, I think it was like, it's almost like you it's like upgrading suits versus numbers and like, I don't know, building out your deck in different ways based on like, do you like making sets? Do you like making royal flushes? Maybe this is more of my like casual take on it where, you know, someone actually knows something about poker would be like, oh, well, the statistics for this, blah, 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 is only this. I don't know. I felt like I was like, you got more points for the like face card, like when face cards were using things. So I felt like I was upgrading those a lot. And then when I figured out like how like changing cards, suits and stuff kind of all worked. I don't know. I feel like every single time they gave me an option to do something, all of them felt compelling. And then like the jokers, I feel like is a whole other strategy. I don't know. There's a lot of depth. There's a lot of systems. It's like systems on systems. The pack unwrapping stuff, the jokers, the different cards you get in the different types of packs you open. Like also the money system is so like incrementally small. Like I feel like that's something that's been interesting watching video games from arcades all the way till now is points are kind of arbitrary, right? It's like you could throw 1,000,000 zeros on something. Like it doesn't matter if it's worth 1 point or like 1,000 points. It's just what you're deciding. But Balatro chose a very small increment and it seems like you're only increasing your money so slowly that it's very important. It puts a lot of like weight on like your decisions.
No, definitely. You're pretty strapped for cash. I mean, once you get to later rounds, that's not as much of an issue.
Right.
But yeah, definitely for like the first couple, which are the most vital in like building your deck out.
Yeah.
You're pretty strapped for cash. I guess my point with the lack of viable strategies, like there were inklings of some completely different things I maybe could have done. Like I could imagine like doing like 3 pairs or 4 pairs as a deck and just like cloning like one card that you make really good and always doing that one. Or even like maybe playing a high card just because there are ways to like upgrade your hand every time you play them pretty much. And you can always play a high card so you could upgrade it a bunch. Those are ideas I had, but realistically there's nothing better than just optimizing for flushes. I feel like just because it's like instead of working with like 12 or whatever different numbers, that's not accurate, but shush, you're working with just 4 different suits, and then later in the game, every time you beat the game with one of like the base decks, you unlock a new deck. One of the decks you unlock, it turns half of your deck into hearts and half of your deck into spades. So now you only have 2 different suits to be dealing with.
Right.
And at that point, it's like, yeah, you just do flushes every single time.
Right.
And like there are some different things you can do. Like you said, you could sometimes focus on the face cards, although that is kind of risky because there are debuffs. You can focus on the lower cards because there are things that favor those.
Yep.
But at a certain point, and let me know, guys, because I genuinely am curious about this, if there are other good strategies. I was like, yeah, I haven't done anything besides a flush run probably the last like 20 times I played.
Yeah, no, those are all fair points. The deck unlocking, though, I think was something I felt super compelling because I never knew, should I go back and invest in the deck that I had just been kind of upgrading, or should I just start with a new deck? And I feel like there's a lot of like replay value in that alone.
When you beat because there are also like levels of difficulty, they call it stakes. So when you beat it on a stake with one deck, you don't unlock the next stake up for all the decks. It's just the deck you beat in. So it does also really like incentivize you to go with just doing one deck a bunch, which is also why I've just been playing flushes, because like this is the deck. This is the deck I'm going to stick with.
Yeah, this is like a game that could never be played in like physical form because like the tabulations of some of this stuff is just like
it would take a long like on paper, I guess this is a game that could exist in the real world and you just play it, but realistically, it's like, it's a lot of math that is happening.
Totally. The fact that no one had thought of this before makes it even more interesting of like a story than like Slay the Spire. Like I felt like Slay the Spire was more inevitable as like something that was going to exist at some point because it draws just so much on like physical games that existed before and as well as video games. So I think Balatro is super interesting, but I don't think people will be playing this game in like 5 years. But maybe, I don't know. There could be like tons of DLC and extra content and whatever.
I mean, I'm playing Slay the Spire, to be fair.
But I mean, I think that's makes Slay the Spire a better game.
In some ways, yeah. I think one thing you kind of hinted at, though, with Slay the Spire, now that we're talking about it a little bit, is these games both kind of lack like any story or depth. Balatro way more so, I would say, even than Slay the Spire. But it does get away with it kind of because with the kind of like smoky filled room elevator music that's playing the whole time in this game and just like the tone of the bits of text that you do see, it is very like almost kind of dismissive of the player in a similar way to like how casinos would be to you, where they're like, you know, we're just kind of here to get your money. It kind of feels like Balatro is trying to tap into that. And that's why I think it does get away with having less depth than Slay the Spire.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, it definitely doesn't need any of that. I mean, I think in some ways, I kept like going back and forth and be like, oh, this game is super accessible. Because I feel like more people, I think there's a lot of people that would never play Slay the Spire because it is a fantasy game. Like there's people out there that just play like just card games, mobile games, people that are just in that, and that's someone that can pick up this game and not maybe draw all the connections to RPGs or whatever, but just think, hey, this is just a card game, and they would play it. I think there's a lot of people that like Slay the Spire would not attract like the same audience.
There's like less nerd gamer baggage.
Right, exactly. But at the same time, like Balatro is kind of like intricate. Like even everything that's happening on the screen, I also felt like, oh, this game is not accessible at all because there's just like way too much to keep up with if you try to understand it. But the game doesn't like punish you for not understanding everything. You can still kind of like stumble your way through it, which I think is good game design to some degree.
Yeah, you can like fully optimize it or just kind of think, you know, the bigger numbers are probably better.
Right.
and live off that. Yeah, I mean, I know I was complaining about the lack of strategy in this game, or not lack of strategy, but the lack of like optimal strategies in this game. That being said, even though I am only doing flushes, there are tons of different ways to achieve that. And it was fun figuring out like what cards pair together best. Like there are lucky cards, which is a type of tarot card that just like has different things it might do. There's a card that also doubles all probabilities. So if you pair those two together, they work super well. And then there's a card that adds like 0.25 multiplier every single time a lucky card triggers. So like pairing all those, it works super well. And it is just when you get a run where everything is clicking and everything's like building off each other perfectly, it is super satisfying. The number gets super high, and as the number gets higher, like the animation gets more like crazy and like it starts burning if you get enough to clear the house in one hand. So yeah, it does definitely like hype you up, and it understands that ultimately the joy of this game is just seeing those numbers get super high.
Right, and that's because of all the synergies that are there. So I mean, that's why I think the strategy is high, because I think it is understanding those synergies and figuring out how to put them together is definitely strategic. I don't really feel like Slay the Spire has that type of synergy in it. Like, I feel like you're making like some pretty hefty choices every single step of the way.
Yeah, I mean,
Slay the Spire.
So Slay the Spire is just like definitely way harder than Balatro. Like, I probably beat like 1 out of every 7 or 8 runs in Balatro, and like I said, in Slay the Spire, it's probably like 1 out of 150. It's very rare that I win.
Right. Slay the Spire is like the Dark Souls of roguelike card games.
No, it's like, I don't know why it is so hard, but it is super hard. Let's get into the ratings. I'm going to give Balatro 8 out of 10. I think in some ways the gameplay is more straightforward and immediately satisfying than Slay the Spire, but I think it does lack some gameplay depth that Slay the Spire has. It does feel like you can be a little more intentional and like specific with how you design your deck, whereas Balatro, there's kind of just like things that work and things that don't, and as long as you are doing a thing that works, it'll work. But then also, obviously, Balatro, like we said, does lack depth and like story, which I think it gets away with. But, combining those two things, I still really love this game, just not as much as Slay the Spire. And I, like you said, I don't think people will be playing Balatro in 5 years. It's 7 years after Slay the Spire came out, and I'm still playing it.
I agree with a lot of that. I think Slay the Spire is a better game, and so since I gave it a 6.5, I think Balatro is a super interesting concept, so I'm going to give it a 6.
Wait, you think did you say you think Balatro's a better game?
No, I think Slay the Spire is better.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know what I said. You have it on tape, so I can replay it and hold that against me.
Slay the Spire is a better game.
But I think Slay the Spire is a better game than Balatro. And I give Slay the Spire 6.5, and I give Balatro a 6.
And I think Balatro had an even smaller team that made it, and I know you don't like that.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah.
When things are cheap.
Yeah, it gets points taken away for not just having money to just throw your game to make it better.
So
really Ubisoft that shit up there.
Yeah, add some like scratch cards or something. I mean, it's already a poker game. I guess it's not that crazy. Maybe they will.
Yeah, I want a deluxe physical edition of Balatro.
I want to download a separate app just to start Balatro so that they can advertise their other games to me.
Perfect.
All right, so if they do that, we'll up our scores by 1. But until Balatro costs $30 million to make, for now, its official Materia score is a 7.5 out of 10. It is slightly better than the Patrick slightly better than the Patrick Star game, and slightly worse than Balatro. Let us know what you guys think of these games. Join our Patreon. We're putting a ton of content on there. Like and subscribe. Comment down below what strategies you've been using. And now we'll get into our Patreon exclusive segment. I have the cards now. See, that's like Balatro.
What cards do you have up your sleeve?
Okay. I think that's probably enough. We're a little bankrupt, I think, in that department.
All right, Zennials, what cards do you have to show me? Well, how are you getting up the, I don't know, what are you even trying to get? You're not trying to do anything in Balatro.
Yeah, not much. Also, why'd you say Zennial?
Zennial, I don't know. I'm just trying to ageist. I'm just being like ageist.
I see.
Yeah. I'm not a Zennial. I am a millennial.
Yeah, no. That's I was like, that's wishful thinking. I don't know if it's wishful, but it's thinking.
No.
It's gymnastics.
Gymnastics.
All right.